My name is Kimberly Datchik, and I'm the Curator of Learning and Engagement at the Stanley Museum of Art. Tonight, we're very lucky to have Elena Smyrniotis joining us. She's the Grant Wood Fellow, and she'll be taking us through her current installation, Labyrinth. The Stanley's virtual programs this year are supported by a generous donation by Yvonne McCabe. We are recording tonight's visit, and it will be available on the Stanley's YouTube page. This event is closed captioned. You can turn on the captions by clicking View Subtitles under the More menu option. Elena Smyrniotis is a printmaking and installation artist with a background in architecture. Her work explores literary and historical utopian ideas through contemplations on the utopian landscape, with a particular focus on architecture, topography, and cartography. She earned an MFA in printmaking from the University of Notre Dame, an MA in printmaking and drawing from the University of St. Francis, and an MA in architecture and engineering from State Petroleum University in Ufa, Russia. Thank you for being with us today, Elena.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for introduction. Good evening, everybody. My name is Elena Smyrniotis. It's nice to have all of you here tonight. I am a Russian-American multimedia artist with background in architecture and engineering. As an artist, as Kimberly already mentioned, I'm interested in the exploration of utopian ideas and how they can be represented in particular space. Today, I'm going to introduce my new installation called Labyrinth. Labyrinth was opened in October of 2020 in the Colony House of the Grant Wood Art Colony in Iowa City. It was open for one-on-one appointments booked through online invitations. I'm very happy today to show my work to more people. I will have about 10-15 minutes PowerPoint presentation, and after that I will show you a video of installation, and then we'll open for conversation. My earlier work focuses on allegorical representations of utopia and dystopia inspired by my own life experiences of living in a big city. My recent and current projects are shifted from the images of crumbling cities towards landscape, concentrating on metaphors of space and emulation of the landscape through cartography and topography. I will talk about my previous work in more detail during my talk in March at the Stanley Museum. I'm interested in installation art because of its close connection to architecture. It is a form of art that can be inhabited and share the same media with architecture, which is space. Like architecture, installation is designed for the human body and its sensory capabilities. While relying on architecture for the structural support, installation can completely transform existing space. Labyrinth is a site-specific installation with elements of sculpture, light, shadows, reflections, and infinity effects. The installation is designed as a journey through the space and time, while spaces slowly reveal itself. It contains of 5 sculptures that are conceptually and compositionally connected to one another and to the gallery space. The sculptures are constructed from the layers pulled away from here. The sculptures are constructed from the layers pulled away from each other and separated by spacers to reveal the inner structure. I hand cut layers from cardboard and foam core using electrical carving tools. I cut my spacers from foam board using heat tools and paint them with black acrylics. These materials are completely transformed by the way I arrange them and by the effects of light and shadows. I use these mundane materials and turn them into something completely unrecognizable and magical. The layers are staggered on the top of one another in a variety of ways. The inner structures are revealed or obscured depending on angle and height of observation. As you move through the gallery space, this angle is always changing and negative spaces between the layers become exposed. The sculptures look solid from a distance. However, at a closer observation, you become aware of layers being suspended and hollow inside. The edge of each layer resembles a topographical line that continues through the space of installation and repeats itself everywhere, starting with the edge of the layers, at the edge of the shadows, infinity reflections, and in the image painted on the wall. This topographical line has slight variations since it's cut by hand and has intentional fuzzy edge. Repeated many times, these lines can be considered a three-dimensional hand drawing. I believe it is easier to connect to the art objects that has a touch of artist's hand, unlike perfect cuts done by the laser cutter. The sculptures built from repeated layers evoke images of architectural structures and geological formations and layers of sedimentations of earth. The space of installation has almost tangible sensation of being inside the cave. The space of Labyrinth. The space of Labyrinth is an ephemeral space full of shadows and mystery where time and space become flexible. Each sculpture has different character and conveys different movement in space. I'll describe and I'll show them one by one in the order they were created. The first sculpture is the largest one and has the strongest character in the space with magnetic power. It's the most architectural piece. The next sculpture has a very organic look. It's growing out of the corner of the gallery, trying to reach out to the first sculpture. It resembles biological forms. The third sculpture is most dynamic. It reminds a skeleton of giant animal trying to escape a scene of installation. The smallest piece is the piece of installation is the one on the left here, and it resembles look and shape of a stalactite. The last and fifth piece is I will describe it later, and that's the one that has an infinity mirror installed inside. The movement of the sculptures is not limited by the parameters of the room and suggests continuity. The dynamic of sculptures and effects of light and shadows are leading viewer through the space to the culminating point at the end of the gallery. The labyrinth contains material and immaterial elements. The space is overtaken by effects of shadows and light. The lights are attached to the walls and to the ceiling of the gallery. Some lights are strategically placed in between the layers of the sculptures to reveal the inner structures and to cast the shadows onto the walls. These shadows are designed to be a continuation of the sculptures and to form landscape-like images on the walls. Presence of light and shadows brings illusory element into the space and provoke conversation between material and immaterial elements of the installation, as between dream and reality. The journey through the labyrinth culminates with immersive experience created by the infinity effect in one of the sculptures. The infinity takes viewer to the next labyrinth created by the distortion of visual sensory experience. The infinity effect is created by a configuration of two reflective surfaces placed parallel to one another. One of the surfaces is plane mirror. I have it at the lower level. And another is partially a reflective surface or half mirror. I use acrylic half mirrors. They are lighter than glass mirrors. This half mirror is placed above of the plane mirror at the same distance, 3 inch as a distance between the layers of the sculptures. I placed LED lights between two mirrors and the same spacers that I used between the layers. The light of LED lights is bouncing from the reflective surfaces infinite count of times. When an outside observer looks into the surface of the half-reflective glass, he sees the tunnel of great depth with repetitions of layers with spacers lit up by the lights. The infinity mirror pulls viewer into augmented reality. So the ending point of travel through labyrinth becomes the beginning of another labyrinth that is challenging physical limitations of the space. The reflections inside the infinity mirror looks exactly like layers of the sculptures that comprise installation, because the size of the reflections is has the same 3-inch size and as the distance between the layers of the sculptures. So here on the left is an image of infinity reflection, and on the right is layers of my sculptures. They look like reverse of each other, reverse image of each other. The effect is the sculpture that is physically present is also growing into the infinity, making actual and virtual space to become one experience, blending reality and illusion. As an installation artist, I take architectural and engineering responsibilities to design, plan, and calculate all elements. I start with measuring the space, planning what materials I will use, how all elements will be connected, and how to make my structure stable and safe. I designed my sculptures to be simply put together in layers and use gravity as binding element. I don't use glue or nails or other mechanical connecting fixtures. The structures are standing because of their own weight. I build them all the way to the ceiling and push last spacers very tightly between the top layer and ceiling to create extra pressure and to make sure that structures are very stable. I can easily take all layers apart and build installation in different space because there is no damage done to the layers or to the spacers. This installation can be modified for different space, and the layers can be assembled and staggered in different ways. Building sculpture from layers is a very architectural approach and connects me to my previous experiences as an architect. The idea of layered sculptures came to me during my fellowship in Rome in 2016, where I studied maps of Rome and observed architectural excavations that reveal layers and layers of history and architecture. One of the examples that inspired me was Basilica di San Clemente in Rome. What you see above the ground is 12th century basilica, which rests on 8th century basilica that is completely submerged under the ground, but still accessible from the first layer. 8th century basilica rests on 1st century BC structures, which rests on even earlier structures. My idea of layered sculptures speaks to reconstructing and excavating of layers of untold or forgotten history. My sculptures are non-representational, they are abstract. As many visitors noticed, that these sculptures look very environmental and connected to nature by evoking biological shapes of coral or crown of a tree or a skeleton of giant animal or geological formation of stalactites. My sculptures are a result of congregation of scientific topographical data and artistic process. I study topography and cartography of different geographical locations and translate this data into three-dimensional forms. I want people to look at my sculptures and think about connection to the earth, connection to the history, and to the environment we live in. The other goal of this project is to explore how landscape functions as a visual and material space, as well as the ways in which landscape can affect and represent our consciousness. Labyrinth is continuing my exploration of the utopian ideas, but also has a reference to the present moment of uncertainty and disorientation we live in since last spring. It is a strange time when we have to live in isolation in order to save our lives. It is difficult for many people to understand what is reality or what is deception of reality. For me, living through this time is like walking through Labyrinth where you don't know what is around the corner and where is the end of the labyrinth. My installation turned out to be an inspiration for the other forms of art. Video and light performance resulted in collaborative projects. The first collaborative project was video. It was done in collaboration with Philippe Rabalahi. He is a video artist and he graduated University of Iowa. Philippe also wrote a music score for the video. The second project is a light performance done in collaboration between myself and Margarita Blash, Grant-Wood Fellow in Theater. Both collaborative projects are a result of transformation of one form of art into another and show continuous life of the work of art. Now I would like to show you the video documentation of Labyrinth that will give better impression of what it is than slides. I forgot to mention that there was a segment in the middle of the video where the shadows begin to move. This is part of the light performance project. I'm ready for your questions.
Hi, everybody. So if you could put your questions into the chat, we'll ask Elena. You can think about her influences, her inspiration, background as an artist. I'll go ahead and kick it off while you all are thinking of your questions and typing them up. The video that you just showed really embodied all of the cinematic aspects of your work, from the shadows, the progression through time and space, the music. Were you thinking about film and filmmakers when you were putting this together? And if so, what were you thinking about?
Well, one of my major sources of inspiration, even before we made this video, is movies by Fritz Lang, in particular Metropolis and Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. These images from the sets from these movies, inspirations for my earlier work. And definitely I was thinking about these movies when I was working on my installation and when we were working on the video.
Thanks. We have a question from Stephanie. She asks, she says, I'm wondering how to see the modes of viewing between installation and video differing or enhancing unique elements of the work.
Well, I was trying to enhance different elements of my work. I think that video gives like a better impression of the space, better pictures of the space and composition when slides and photos can give you better details of structures and shapes of the sculptures.
Yeah. And kind of the next question also has to do with sort of the structures and the shapes. It asks, how did you come up with decide upon 3 inches between the layers? And then if you installed this in another size space, how did that affect the installation?
Well, I was trying to find the right rhythm for this room, and this is what the layers put on the top of one another. This is what they create. They create rhythm in the room. And I tried different sizes, and I thought this was correct size for this particular space. I imagine that if I was working on installation in a larger space, I would probably try to build bigger spacers. But for this particular space, this size just feels right.
Could you describe the space that it's installed in? I think you get a sense of the space, but it's a little bit abstracted in the video.
Well, it's very simple space. It has L shape. So, and the entrance is at the beginning of a longer part of L, and when you come in, you see the sculptures, but you also see there is like something around the corner. So, and I was trying to attract people to go around the corner and see the final part of the installation. So the installation, the space was designed to be different from what it is in real life. And when I turn all lights off and I turn like the other lights on, so then the space is filled up with shadows, and they kind of direct you to move through the space and find another element of installation. Unfortunately, I cannot have the same lights right now because it will be too dark in this room and you won't be able to see anything.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a question from Linda about discussing how you select your materials and maybe kind of the effects that you want those materials to have as you're walking through the final installation.
Well, my number one criteria is to choose the materials that I can handle by myself. So I can buy them, I can bring them in my car, I can handle them, I can cut them or melt them, put them together, put them apart, transport them without anybody's help. So at this point of my life, I just want to be independent in the ways that I can handle these materials. The other aspect of my choices based on, how easy, so I wanted to cut these layers, and first I tried paper, but this paper can't hold this horizontal shape, so I chose different materials that can hold its like a horizontal shape, but still can be easily cut by hand into the shapes that I want to.
Oh, thank you. Can you talk about, you mentioned Fritz Lang as one of the artists and filmmakers that you were thinking about as you were thinking about this installation. What other artists did you find yourself in dialogue with as you were creating this?
Well, my other longtime inspiration for many years is Italian architect and printmaker Giovanni Battista Piranesi, and specifically his series of prints called carceri, that means prisons. Piranesi was an architect by education, but ended up to be a printmaker just like myself because of the different reasons. He also he did prints, but he also used space as one of the main elements of his prints. So he created this series of architectural spaces with full of paradoxes and geometrical impossibilities. So he has staircases leading to nowhere and just stopping. He uses he uses a few vanishing points when he builds his perspective for his prints to bring even more confusion into the space. The space are filled up with giant architectural elements and machinery, and have this very oppressive feeling, and they reflect on the time when Piranesi lived, and all this the problems that was characteristic for this time. So he's my inspiration for my urban disaster series. I showed the slide, my first slide. This is my urban disaster series, and still until now he is on my mind when I work with my installations. My other inspirations are land artists of 1960s, such as Robert Smithson, who built Spiral Jetty, My other inspiration is Michael Hazer, specifically his work called Munich Depression, when he basically used like a huge opening in the earth to make his photos of this space. And this space is very confusing because by being lower than the level of Earth, you don't understand where is horizon line. So it's just a very disorienting experience. My other inspiration is Yayoi Kusama and her infinity rooms, and because I use the same element in my installations, but I use it with different purposes. Her purpose is obliteration, and my purpose is creating this mysterious space, which is extension of my installation.
Yeah, thank you. I think we kind of touched on the next question a little bit as well, about inspiration beyond architecture and installation, kind of thinking about land art, and Piranesi, of course, thinking about printmaking. I'd like to close with kind of thinking about, do you find anything essential or kind of continuing throughout all of your installations and your print work? Kind of what is kind of like a core connecting point amongst them?
I think if I'll try to say it in 3-4 words, it's a search for the unknown and a search for the mystery of places that we can imagine or we can find or discover. And the other element is a journey. So I think as an artist, I am traveling and congregating the different information that I get through my travels, and then I translate it into my artwork.
Thank you, Elena. This has been a wonderful introduction to your work in Labyrinth. Thank you, everybody, for spending tonight with us. Our next program is Stanley Reads, which will be on February 6th. That's a Saturday, and you can register on our website for that. We're reading At the End of the Century by Ruth Prower Jabbala. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good night.